Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I'm Beth Syverson. I'm an adoptive mom of a vibrant and insightful young adult son, Joey, who is on his healing path. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. Joey and I are committed to helping anyone impacted by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. I'm also a certified coach, helping seekers who want to move their lives forward. So listeners, have you ever heard of breathwork? It's a powerful healing modality that goes beyond simple awareness of the breath, which is also a great tool, and it provides significant healing for people, especially when trauma is involved. I've had powerful experiences using breathwork myself, and I highly recommend it under the guidance of a practitioner. Today's guest is Kellan Bacon, a gender-expansive transracial adoptee from China who was adopted as an infant in 1998 to England. Now living in Cardiff, Wales, they've recently started a professional practice called Kai Ming Holistics to help others using breathwork and other embodied modalities that have helped them so much. They are one of our 100 practitioners in our Healing the Adoption Constellation database. So welcome to Unraveling Adoption, Kellan. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, I'm very excited to be talking with you.
Thank you. You're my first Welsh person I've ever known.
Welsh person. I don't know if I'd count as Welsh since I've only just moved here.
You're just a transplant. Okay, so you're Welsh English hyphenated. Okay, yes. You're living in Wales. Okay, well, you're the first person I've known that lives in Wales. Well, first, I always want to highlight adoptee stories. So let us know whatever parts of your adoption story you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I was adopted in 1998 from China. And I feel like adoption was always one of those things where the dominant narrative around it was that I'd been saved. And, I kind of grew up with this belief that I was like, adoption doesn't affect me and I'm totally fine. And my parents are just my parents. It's all the same. Mm-hmm. And we often use the term coming out of the fog, meaning that we realize how adoption has impacted us and the trauma involved, and the grief, the loss that is involved in that. And I think that happened for me around when I was 19, 20, so 20-ish, okay. Around 2019. And that was when I was kind of going through a mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. And it was actually only after that it really hit me, and I was able to kind of validate all of the feelings that had kind of been bubbling below the surface, like just like a dam ready to kind of burst open. Okay. And that's kind of really where my deeper healing journey began, really.
Wow. Yeah. Just curious, did a professional bring up adoption trauma, or was this just you that realized, well, this might be bigger than I thought?
Oh, yeah, interesting. I think it was mainly myself that realized this, in that I'd had a few therapists before, but most of them weren't trained in adoption or particularly adoption competent. And actually, I did have a couple of therapists before that perhaps worked with me around certain aspects that are impacted by, everything's kind of been impacted by adoption. It's all interconnected. Yes. But I think they actually did quite a bit of harm. They kind of reinforced that very traditional narrative around being saved and, just let go of the past type of
Yes.
thing.
Oh, you were so little, you don't even remember, or stuff like that. Yes. We've heard that too from therapists that have tried to help Joey. And they can definitely make it worse if they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, so it just bubbled up for you. And that's a pivotal time for many people, that young adult age. You're trying to figure out who the heck you are, what is going on. And you were raised by white people in England?
Yes. Yeah. Both my adopted parents are white.
Yeah. So you had the transracial aspect of it as well. How was that for you? Was it a big problem? Did you get bullied?
I think growing up, I got the kind of really stereotypical racist comments that a lot of Chinese people get, and people doing thin eyes at you. And it depended on where I was at, really. And again, it was one of those things that I didn't acknowledge it at all. I thought it was just very normalized to be Chinese and have two white parents. And I think it's only in more recent years, and actually it's still something that I feel like I'm still processing. and things around it are still landing for me.
Mm-hmm.
In that I now feel quite a big severance with that, where I'm just like, my family often doesn't quite feel like family anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this disconnect there,
yeah.
and it almost feels like untrue to me to kind of see it as like a normal family connection when there's just this. So before coming out as trans and presenting more masculine as myself, I was mistaken as my dad's wife quite a few times. Yeah, where there was this massive age difference as well, and it was just very disgusting. Yeah, so uncomfortable.
Like what do they call those? Like when people go to Thailand and buy a bride. Ew.
Yeah.
That must have felt terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, awkward. Yeah, that's yuck. And did you want to talk about your trans experience? Transgender? You've got like two, transracial and transgender.
many
Double trans
transitions going on. Yeah, so I think my kind of coming to terms with my queerness actually very much was instigated by my coming out of the fog.
Oh, interesting.
And I think it was only after I'd kind of come to terms with where I'd come from and this truth around my roots and the trauma with adoption, that I actually felt safe enough to start exploring my authentic self more and realizing that actually I wasn't like meant to be the perfect golden, daughter that my parents went over and got, and that actually there was just so much to explore around gender and sexuality and so many other aspects of life.
Yeah, so this has been a 4 or 5 year trek for you so far, then, I think, if I'm counting right. Yeah, wow. And that is huge. And it indicates that our identities are not in little nice, neat boxes and pockets. We are a whole person, and all of these things that impact us and have to get all unraveled together, intertwined back however you want them to be. It's a major transformation, and I very much admire you for, I can't imagine how much effort and insight and work you've had to do to parse all this out and to stay safe and to, be productive and like do your life through the whole thing. That's a lot. Plus we had COVID in the middle of all that. And, and I think you said that COVID affected you getting some help. Is that right? Am I remembering that right from our previous conversation?
Yes. Yeah. So COVID is actually how I got into somatics in the first place. So it wasn't straight off the bat when COVID was kind of rife, but I did contract COVID and I recovered and I was fine for a few days. And then all of a sudden this COVID fatigue set in. And I'd always been really active. I'd always enjoyed working out and just fitness. And suddenly I was just too tired to get out of bed. My brain fog was so intense, I was not remembering things.
Wow. And
with that came so much depression. It was my body was just going into this collapse, shutdown response. And my nervous system was just not happy at all.
Wow.
So I was doing nutritional therapy at the time, and I was doing so much to help my body physically. But then it wasn't until somebody just offhand mentioned breathwork for energy. And, I was one of these slight skeptics. I was like, well, I've been breathing all my life. What can breathwork do for me, really? Right. What does it have to offer? But I was getting a bit desperate at this time because, I was really fatigued and nothing was really kind of getting me back to where I wanted to be, which just, as a side note, I kind of don't believe that we get back to where we were. I feel like illness is very much like a catalyst for our growth and becoming so much more than we were. And sometimes that does look different and does look like, using different supports and working around your energy in a different way. But anyway, I'll get back to the story. And it wasn't until I did breathwork that I actually felt my energy was kind of starting to heal and starting to be restored. And then I, again, randomly just signed up for a breathwork facilitation event that I thought would be very much similar to what I'd been practicing. So more traditional, they call pranayama, energizing breathwork.
Yeah, just kind of being aware.
Yeah.
Focus on your breath.
Yeah, breathing exercises to, calm, energize, that kind of thing. But this was much more of an intense, deep experience where something called conscious connected breathing. And instead of, it kind of just energizing you or calming you, you go inwards, you go deep with it. And it's a very activating breathwork style where you're actually purposefully raising your oxygen levels, like hyperventilating. And this can put our nervous system into like a very activated state, which might not always be a great thing.
Yeah.
But in this context, it's kind of like it's allowing the body to get to the nervous system state where trauma occurred. So it's kind of being able to access that.
Yes.
And through doing that in this state, the body can naturally start to process the stuck trauma and the stuck energy that we've been holding in the body for so long, like potentially all our lives, especially for adoptees where potentially that trauma happened at birth, just after.
In utero.
Yeah, before.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I wonder if you would be willing to just very briefly demonstrate what the breath is like.
Yeah, okay. So I've not had that before. That's interesting. But the breath it sounds so simple as well, but it's just a very quick inhale through the mouth, which is more activating than a nasal breath. And then it's almost like a sigh of relief. So what we're doing with that is we're taking in so much oxygen and expelling the CO2. So we're really reducing the CO2. So it looks and sounds a bit like. So we're breathing like deep into that like lower belly, the diaphragm. Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said in the intro, I've done breathwork a few times, and it's kind of, the work part is no joke. It's like a physical activity. It's not like laying on your yoga mat and just relaxing. This is like intense. It's like a physical exercise, but it does get you places, and it gets you similar places that psychedelics get you, I think. And it can get you to some of those other layers that your regular old brain doesn't want to go to. Yeah. So I think it's wonderful. And I also think that it is important to do it with somebody that knows what they're doing. Because like you said, it can pull up trauma, and you don't really want to be by yourself completely, unsupported. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. It can be a very intense experience, and a lot can come up, and it's important to have a guide there to like resource and bring some external safety, especially for those kind of people that maybe haven't done so much somatic therapy before and don't have a strong connection to their internal safety resources just yet.
Yeah, because it might bring up some stuff. And if you're not really well versed in your inner world and how to handle all of this trauma, you need somebody to help you navigate that. And also, like, what if you get into a spot in breathwork? Like, for instance, if you're using psychedelics, you're gone for hours. Like, you have no choice. Once you've taken it, you're gone. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
But breathwork, how do you get out of it? Like, what if you don't want to be there anymore? What do you do?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think the upside with breathwork is that we're in control of the breath at all times. And so if it's too intense, we can actually just slow the breath. We can raise our CO2 by breathing into our hands. There's a lot of different little things we can do to just bring that physiology back to its more baseline state. And they call conscious connected breathing psychedelic breath as well sometimes. So we can enter these almost like trance-like psychedelic experiences. Or in that we have so much agency where we haven't taken something that's like now in our blood. Where we're just in control of the breath. Yeah.
And you're never really completely gone. Like when I was doing breath work, I definitely had some very, very strong visionary experiences that have still affected me to today. But at any time I could have said, stop, I don't want to do this anymore. And I could have just slowed down my breathing and been done with it. So it's like my soul or myself or my, whatever's watching it's all happen was conscious and ready to stop it if I felt too scared or too whatever. So I think breathwork is amazing for people that might want to go a little deeper into their trauma, if they want to kind of start looking at stuff, looking at some of those layers. The cognitive behavioral therapy, that frontal lobe stuff is great, but it won't touch that deep wounds.
Yeah, it's great up till it's not. Like, it can take us so far.
Yeah. It's great for day-to-day living, for, problem solving, whatever, those kinds of things. So I'm not it's fine, it's good, but
Yeah.
it won't get to, especially for adoptees. How do you think breathwork particularly is helpful for adoptees with maybe some really old, very early childhood trauma?
Yeah, exactly. Because our trauma goes back so far and early in life. It's often pre-verbal or precognitive, sometimes people say, where we can't directly access the memories to it. Mm-hmm. So unlike, I guess, traditional talk therapy, we might not be able to talk about it and process it from that rational mind. And, when trauma occurs, you're probably familiar with like internal family systems and this idea that there's parts of us within us. And often when we're triggered, the parts of us that are activated have the mental age, the capacity and resources that part had. And when our parts are so young, it's almost like talking doesn't really do anything for them.
Yeah, they don't understand.
Yeah, they have to feel it. They have to process it in the body where it's been held in the nervous system. Mm-hmm. And so, our trauma isn't just in the stored memory in the brain. It's literally in our cells, in our nervous system, maybe even in our DNA. There's a lot of connection between adoptee trauma and, anyone's trauma and our health.
Yes.
And, chronic pain, things like IBS. I don't know if you've noticed, something that I've noticed is adoptees and gut issues.
Stomach stuff. Oh, yeah. So common.
Such a correlation there, I think.
Yes. Well, that was a brilliant explanation of how trauma lives in the body and how breathwork can really get to it in a really unique and gentle way. Like we said, without substances, you're not putting anything in your body, and just with a guide helping you. I think when I've done breathwork, they've used music. Do you incorporate music?
Yeah, I like to use music that people may not have heard of before, and maybe cultural music.
Yes.
Music that invokes that kind of ancestral feelings within us.
Oh, it's interesting you said that, because I'm a musician and I resonate deeply with music. And when I did my first one, the whole soundtrack was amazing, but then it hit a song I knew. It was kind of an obscure song from a film, so I'm sure most people had no idea, but it was one of my favorite films and my favorite pieces of music. I'm like, got right out of it. Because then my mind was like, oh, I remember that movie. Oh, I love that song. And so it's interesting that it's important to find the music that is not going to remind you of stuff, or it should be fresh and new. I love that. So, and you went to school for this or got a certificate, or how did you get trained?
Yeah, I did a breathwork facilitation course. It was mainly online, and I actually work virtually a lot with people.
Yeah.
I know a lot of in-person stuff can be really beneficial. But I tend to work with queer people and adoptees, and we're kind of spread out. So I didn't want to limit myself to, just the people in my travelable distance.
Yes.
I wanted to work with the wider community.
It seems like COVID made the breathwork explode. Is that true?
Yeah, I feel like before it was perhaps very niche and not many people knew about it. They'd maybe heard of Wim Hof, the Iceman. But I feel like the interest in it really soared after COVID, because suddenly people were interested in their lungs and breathing and being able to breathe when COVID took that away from us,
Yeah, I didn't think of that correlation. Yeah, and you can do it. I did it in a big group. I just had headphones on and there was a facilitator, and you could ask for help if you needed it. But everyone was just, in our own bedrooms with our own headphones. And it's pretty amazing. So you work with people throughout the world, and you're on our Healing the Adoption Constellation database, and you love working with queer adoptees. And I think you have a group, right, that meets, a support group?
Yeah, the trans-adoptee group, yes.
Trans-adoptees, an even deeper niche.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds trans-adoptees And if people wanted to use you as a practitioner or find your trans-adoptee group, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so I'm probably most prevalent, I guess, on Instagram. So I've got my, my kind of public normal account where I do share about trans things, about my life. And then I've got my Kai Ming Holistics account, and people can find me on either of those and DM or email me about maybe a discovery call or any of my offerings, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure and put those links in the show notes. So everyone look in the show notes, just scroll either down or to the side underneath where you pressed play for this. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your own healing or anything else about what you do?
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about root cause healing, like root cause therapy. So that's something that I've just been training in, and I've literally just certified in it, actually.
Oh, are you saying root cause?
Root cause, yeah.
Oh.
Like really going to the root of our kind of, well, it involves a few different kind of modalities, really. Yeah, the synthesis of them. And it's a way to basically get to our subconscious limiting beliefs and just the beliefs that we kind of stored in our, not just our brain, but our entire system.
Mm-hmm.
Things like, I fear abandonment, or I'm not good enough. And it's so interesting because often we have like an intellectual desire to do things and we're like, oh, I'm ready for this. But then we sabotage and we have these blocks and it's like, where is this coming from? But our beliefs are always trying to prove themselves right. So the root cause is basically, it allows us to see what they are and to go back using different techniques and timeline therapy to go back to when these beliefs were kind of instigated in the first place. And what's been interesting on my journey is that I thought I'd be going back and, looking at birth and my birth mother and mother wounds. And for some of them, I went to past lives. I went way back.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's something that I expected or not, but it's really opened my mind to the possibility of this energy being passed on. We've got transgenerational trauma,
yes,
but perhaps even beyond that, where our trauma has maybe been passed down as a soul trauma.
From one life to the next.
Yeah.
I am open to the possibility of that happening. And I don't know, maybe we get another chance at it. Okay, here's another whack at this. You still aren't figuring this part out. So let's give you another try here. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know how the universe works or what's going on.
No.
But it's fascinating. It sounds like you're really doing some deep work. And I'm kind of amazed and impressed with you because you're just in your 20s, right?
Yeah, I just turned 27, which 27. Is it's a comment sometimes where people are like, I didn't realize how young you were. Like, but I've worked with, some 60-year-olds and 50-year-olds.
Sure.
And I love doing it.
That's great. I mean, a lot of people your age are just trying to figure it out, like just day-to-day living, and you're really going deep with it. So that's very impressive.
I'm still trying to figure it all out,
Yeah. Oh, we all are. Wow, believe me, I'm in my 50s. We're still just working out at it, hacking away at it. Well, I really am so glad you came on to talk. I am, very glad that you're in collaboration with me and doing the Healing the Adoption Constellation database, and that you're providing these wonderful, wonderful resources for adoptees and others. You work with other people that are not adopted too.
Yes. Yeah.
But that I think that your modalities, the somatic work, the breath work, is so critical for adoptees. And I think it's a wonderful tool to get to some of those layers that our mind blocks us from.
Yes.
So if they're willing, I really hope people reach out to you or to find breathwork on their own, maybe where they live or whatever. These practices are available. They're out there. There are folks that are really wanting to help other people. So I hope people really dig into it. We'll leave some links in the show notes, like we said. And I'm just so glad to know you. I'm glad you were here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for reaching out to me as well. I'm really happy to connect.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for listening and supporting Unraveling Adoption. And make sure and go check out Kellan's website and all their offerings. And Kellan and I want you all to stay safe.